Chapter 6. When the sun woke Oriana the following day, she rolled over to face away from the windows. How could it be morning already when she had just fallen asleep? She stared at the wall, but the sun relentlessly brightened the room. Then she heard Joseph's voice in the main room, so she slid out of bed. After a shower, she dug through her clothes and considered every piece. Eventually, she decided on a lavender dress with an empire waist that hung just above her knees. She stared at herself in the full-length mirror on the bathroom door. Her father would have been shocked to see her in such a short skirt. She ran her hands over the silky fabric. He wasn't here to see her anyway. "Almost cute," she said out loud. Then she strapped on the sandals and walked out into the main room. Joseph was sitting on the couch, elbows braced against his knees, face in his hands. He didn't look up until she sat next to him. The dark circles under his eyes told her he hadn't slept well either. He ran a finger down the side of her face. "Promise me you'll be careful. Take care of yourself and don't be too trusting. I have to know you'll be okay." "I promise." He pulled her into a tight hug. She hugged him back and rested her head on his chest. They sat that way for several minutes. "We'd better eat some breakfast. I have to go soon." He gestured at the tray of food on the coffee table that she hadn't noticed before. Oriana stared at the plate of pancakes with strawberries and her stomach felt sick. But Joseph was watching her, waiting. She sat forward and took a forkful. There was no flavor, no joy in it. But the food stayed down, so she kept eating. Joseph picked up his plate of ham and eggs and ate it so quickly she wondered if he was swallowing the bites whole. He checked his wristwatch. "Time to go," he said as he stood up. Oriana followed him to the door where his duffel bag was propped against the wall. "What do I do?" Her voice cracked when she spoke, and she dropped her eyes to the floor. "Oh, Oriana," he hugged her. "I wish I could stay with you." He held her away from him, but kept his hands on her shoulders. "I've paid for this suite for another week. You can stay here for now to figure out what you want to do. The university is very good. You could enroll there. I'm sure you'll get in if you apply. I know Gemma and Enoa hoped you would. Don't forget about the places I showed you where you could rent a room. If you do well enough on the entrance exams, the school might even cover some of your living expenses." He pointed at the speaker on the wall by the door. "Press this button here if you want to order food up from room service. Your meals are covered for the next week, too." He leaned down and kissed her forehead before releasing her and picking up his bag. "Will you see me off?" She nodded and followed him out of the hotel and down the street to a fleet bus stop. A dozen or so uniformed people were waiting in and around the bus shelter. A couple of them waved and greeted Joseph. He waved back, but stayed a little apart with Oriana and holding her hand. It seemed only seconds had passed when the bus glided up and set down in front of the bus stop. The doors opened and the soldiers lined up to board. Joseph turned to Oriana. A tear escaped her eye and she couldn't stop the rest from following it. Joseph gently brushed his finger through her tears. He leaned down and kissed her cheek, then her lips. He embraced her tightly for a moment, then stepped back and gazed down at her. "Promise me you'll take care of yourself, then I'll be okay too." "I promise, Joseph," she whispered. He nodded, then turned and climbed onto the bus. It rose up moments later and glided away, leaving Oriana alone on the street with a crowd of people rushing past her. She sat in the bus shelter and watched the people and vehicles going by. Her body felt empty, cold. She wondered if the people could see her. The sun was high in the sky when she stood up and walked back to the Colonial. She looked around at the noisy people and wondered how the world went on when her heart was breaking again. When she reached her suite, she sat on the couch and stared straight ahead at the blank vid screen. The sun was setting and the lights in the main room winked on. Oriana's stomach rumbled. She looked at the clock on the wall and realized the Chicago would be gone by now. Her legs were heavy as she stood up and walked to the middle of the room. "I should eat," she said. Downstairs, the diners would be eating food served by waitstaff, and the pianist would be playing from her corner. She pictured all of those people and heard the conversation roaring in her ears. Her heart beat faster and her hands shook. She sucked in breaths rapidly. No. She went into the bedroom Joseph had used. The blanket was shoved to one side and the pillows were bunched up in the middle at the head. She climbed up on the bed and picked up one of the pillows. She held it to her nose and breathed in his scent. Then she lay down on her side and curled around the pillow. She closed her eyes. The morning sun caused her to stir again. She sat up slowly and groaned at the pain in her stomach. You have to eat. You promised to take care of yourself. She slid off the bed and straightened her dress. Then she went into the main room and stood by the speaker. There were buttons labeled front desk, kitchen, housekeeping, and concierge. She touched the button for kitchen. A man's voice came out of the speaker. Good morning. What would please you for breakfast? Could I have pancakes with strawberries? Certainly, miss. Would you like some fresh orange juice or coffee as well? Orange juice, please? Certainly. Your breakfast will be brought up to you shortly. Please let us know if there is anything else we can get for you. Thank you. She sat on the couch to wait. I wonder if Joseph is serving breakfast to Gemma and Anoa right now. Everything is back to normal there, I guess. She stared down at her hands in her lap and felt the pressure of tears in her eyes, but she held them back, waiting for the breakfast to arrive. She didn't want anyone to see her crying. When the knock at the door did come, she jumped to her feet and felt her heart racing. She took a deep breath. It's only room service. She forced her feet one in front of the other and approached the door. Her hand hovered by the handle. She took in another deep breath and opened it. A man in a white uniform stood there holding a tray with a cover on it. Shall I place it on the table for you, miss? Yes, please. She stepped out of the way and watched him carry the tray to the little dining table that they had never used while Joseph was there. He removed the cover and placed the plate of pancakes and strawberries and the glass of orange juice on the table. Then he went to collect the dishes from the coffee table. He paused before he left the room. If there's anything else we can get you, please let us know. He made a little bow, then left the room. Oriana felt the pressure release from her chest and her mouth started to water when the door clicked closed. She sat at the table and devoured the food. Then she leaned back in the chair and closed her eyes. She pictured her mother at the stove making pancakes for her. She thought of the sound of Piero and Allegra arguing in the living room. And she could almost smell the scent of her father coming in after a day of repairing machinery. Tears flowed from her eyes. Three days went by the same way. Oriana called for room service when she was hungry. She wandered around the rooms and sat staring at whatever was playing on the vid screen. Sometimes she slept in her bedroom, sometimes in Joseph's. She stared out the windows at the city far below. Did anyone down there know about what happened to her family, she wondered? Did they care? She wondered what Joseph was doing right then. When the server brought dinner on the third night, he also handed a chip to her. Several messages arrived for you today, miss. If you wish to send return messages, we have booths off the lobby that you may use. Oh, thank you. After he left, she stood looking at the tiny chip on her palm. Several messages, he had said. She went into the bedroom, retrieved the tablet from her duffel, and took it to the table in the main room. She pushed her plate to one side and placed the tablet beside it. Then she popped the chip into the slot in the side and pressed the power button. While she waited for it to boot up, she munched on her pasta. The contents of the chip showed 3 video messages and 2 documents. She tapped the first message. Gemma's face appeared on the screen. The wall behind her looked like her tiny office. Oriana set down her fork and pushed the plate aside. She folded the case to form a stand so that she was looking right into Gemma's eyes. She tapped the play button. Hello, Oriana. I hope you're doing well. Joseph mentioned that you might be enrolling in Izanagi University. That's a wonderful idea. I know you'll be accepted. I've attached a reference letter for you. Just attach it to your application profile. I miss you here. Message me back and tell me all about what's happening. I love you. The image froze on Gemma waving at the camera. It blurred as Oriana's eyes filled with tears. She brushed them away and smiled at Gemma's smiling image. She tapped the X in the corner to close the message and tapped the next one. It was Inoa, framed by the colors of her rooms. Aloha, Oriana. How are you doing so far on Izanagi? I want to hear about everything. I heard that you're considering university. That's a very good path for you. I've attached a letter of reference for you. Don't settle on a focus of study right away. Explore everything and find your passion. You will be successful at whatever you choose to study. Don't forget to message us, darling. Oriana closed the message, and her finger hovered over the last one for a moment before she tapped it. Joseph's face appeared on the screen before her. She followed the shape of his face with her eyes. Then she tapped play. Hey, sweetheart, how are you? Are you eating? Taking care of yourself? Did you enroll in university yet? What have you been doing? I'm just doing all the usual stuff, serving officers. It isn't the same without you. Dr. Fiore and Counselor Inoa are sending reference letters to you. Not that you need them. You can get into that university on your own merits, but it doesn't hurt. He paused and rubbed his eyes. I miss you, Oriana. Take care of yourself. Let me know how you're doing. She played the message from Joseph several more times. He looked tired. She wondered if he was sleeping. There was just a plain white wall behind him. She played it again with her eyes closed while pretending he was in the room with her. She could almost smell him. Then she put the tablet aside and finished her dinner. Everyone thought she should go to the university. She thought she did have more to learn. When the plate was empty, she pulled the tablet back over and read the reference letters from her friends. They were too complimentary, she thought, but she knew she would include them with her application. She tapped the browser and searched for the university's page. It was full of images of happy students and faculty. She wondered if she belonged with those people. But she tapped the application button on the homepage and started filling in the form. The address stumped her for a minute before she filled it with the address of the hotel. Financial information came up. No income, family support, orphan, prior education, homeschooled. She chewed her lip as she answered each question. Finally, it let her attach the letters of recommendation. Last, there were 2 buttons, submit or cancel. Her shaking finger hovered over them. Submit. She watched a new page load, displaying a message thanking her for her application. It said it would take 24 to 72 hours for review. Nothing to do but wait, she said to herself.